Hi and welcome everyone. Welcome to our webinar today entitled Sustainable City Development from a City Leader's Perspective. Today is actually our second urban financing webinar, which is brought to us by GDI and Think City. And this is actually a follow-up to our first webinar 2 months ago on the 12th of May, and that was about funding resilient cities. So today we'll be focusing on another real issue, challenges of financing sustainable city development from a city leader's perspective. And we have with us two city leaders and a CityNet Secretariat as we discuss the post-COVID investment climate, as well as how city development needs and financing requirements are being reprioritized. Wadzi, if you're there, would you take it away? Thanks, Wadzi.
I am. Thank you, Donny.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone, and welcome, as Donny said, to our second webinar. My name is Wadzi Katsidzira from Global Development Incubator, and together with Think City Institute, we have been hosting these webinars that are focused on financing challenges at the local government level. A little bit of an introduction before we move to our discussion with our distinguished panel. So Global Development Incubator is an organization that incubates multi-stakeholder partnerships and initiatives from across the globe that are focused on solving the most pressing developmental challenges. One such initiative that we have is a partnership with UN Habitat, which is focused on solving the challenge of infrastructure financing across the globe, particularly in developing cities, primary and secondary cities in low and middle income countries across Asia, Africa, and Latin America. I'll speak a little bit more about that particular initiative, which gives some context for the discussion that will happen today. Our other partner, of course, and the other host of this webinar is Think City, which is a social purpose organization based in Malaysia with the mission of making cities more people-friendly, resilient, and livable. As a regional city-making agency, Think City provides urban policy thinking, management, and implementation of urban solutions while acting as a catalyst for change in the way cities are planned, curated, developed, and celebrated. And so thank you so much for joining us in this second webinar in our series. We will have 3 speakers today who are all experts in their field. And we'll have a moderated panel discussions. We've got some questions to kick us off, but we do ask that you please use the chat box to share your questions with us, and we will field them to the panelists. Our hour-long webinar will focus on challenges that local governments face in accessing financing, as well as innovations in the current post-pandemic climate to mobilize investment at the local level. Our 3 speakers are Mayor Noraini Roslan, who is the mayor of Subang Jaya in Malaysia, Mayor Arlene Arcillas, who is the mayor of Santa Rosa in the Philippines, and Jaime Paulo Mora, who is the senior program officer from CityNet. Before we start, a quick word, and I'll ask the speakers to turn off their cameras now for now, and I'll come back to them and introduce them in fuller detail and ask them to start speaking. Thank you. So before we get started, just a quick word on the formatting. You'll see a chat function in the sidebar. As I said earlier, you can post your questions here for the speakers. If you do have a question for a specific speaker, please make sure that you make that clear when you post it. The earlier you ask your questions, the greater your chance of it being asked. For our global vanity purposes, it would be wonderful if when you ask your question, if you can just let us know which city and country you're listening from. And finally, if you have trouble hearing, please press the reconnect button that you can see at the top of your screen. If you still are having problems, then please try to refresh your browser and you will be brought back into the session. A little bit of context before we move on to the panel discussion. I mentioned the Cities Investment Advisory Platform, which is the anchor initiative that GDI is incubating together with our partners at UN Habitat, as well as at Think City and across other partners. The Cities Investment Advisory Platform is really focused on solving this infrastructure financing challenge, which affects local governments across the globe. We see a rapidly urbanizing population across the world and an infrastructure financing gap Globally, that's in excess of 4 trillion, but in Asia, it's about 400 billion per annum, and that's according to the Asian Development Bank. Some of the drivers of this gap as factors like, fundamental financing challenges, which I think some of our panelists will speak to today, as well as structural regulatory blockers, as well as just a limited range of financing models at the local level. And so the work that we're trying to do with the city's investment advisory platform is to really improve the quality and quantum of bankable infrastructure projects that are driven and implemented at the local level. And we're focusing on doing that by supporting the two sides. So government sponsors of infrastructure projects in terms of supporting around portfolio planning, as well as project preparation. And then on the other side, connecting and engaging with investors to see what innovative financing mechanisms and models can be brought to bear in the space. We see webinars as a really helpful and valuable tool and precursor to a lot of the engagement work around building capacity at local government levels, but also driving engagement and crucial conversations across sectors. Today, the title of our panel and our webinar discussion is The City Leader's Perspective. Now more than ever, urban communities are hugely reliant on their local governments to provide key infrastructure and basic services that enable them to live healthy and meaningful lives. And yet there are a significant number of constraints that are impacting local governments, and that is possibly attenuated in the current context where there's fiscal pressure on budgets that were already constrained and limited. The mechanisms and pathways for engagement are few at the local government level. And, in a post-pandemic world, the demands are continuing to increase. And so the purpose of this discussion today is to really hear from two leading mayors and a network perspective as to how they're thinking about addressing these challenges. So with that context, I will now move to our panel discussion. So I will introduce the panelists in detail and give each a chance to introduce themselves. Firstly, we have the mayor of Subang Jaya in Malaysia, Mayor Noraini Roslan. Mayor Noraini, thank you for turning on the camera. Mayor Haja Noraini binti Roslan is currently the president of the PEMSA Network of Local Governments for Sustainable Coastal Development, PNLG. The PNLG is one of the major driving forces of the Sustainable Development Strategy for the Seas of East Asia, with a goal to cover 25% of the regional coastline with integrated coast management programs by the year 2021. Mayor Noraini Roslan holds a master's in regional planning from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, North Carolina, USA, and Bachelor of Science, magna cum laude in urban and regional planning from East Carolina University, North Carolina, USA. She was first appointed for 8 years as mayor of the Kuala Selangor District Council and Hulu Selangor District Council, and has been serving as the mayor of the Subang Jaya Municipal Council since 2018. She has pledged to make Subang Jaya a smart, safe, healthy, green, women-friendly, sustainable city by 2030. Mayor Noraini, would you be able to tell us a little bit about Subang Jaya?
Thank you, Wadzi. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Subang Jaya is a city of close to 1 million population. It is very near to Kuala Lumpur. In fact, we share a border. And I can say that Subang Jaya is among the second layer city in Malaysia. And we are compact and almost fully urbanized. And the economic activity in Subang Jaya is focused on education, health, and other services sector more than any other sectors, I would say. And in the context of the Malaysian government, the local authority here are not elected. I am appointed by the state government, and so does all the other mayors and presidents of municipal councils in Malaysia. But we do have financial autonomy and most of our income comes from the property taxes, the business licenses, and also the processing fee. Back to you, Wadzi.
Great. Thank you, Mayor. I will now move to the next mayor. So Mayor Arlene Arcillas, who is the mayor of Santa Rosa, Philippines. Mayor Arlene Arcillas is the first elected female mayor of the city of Santa Rosa. She has served as city mayor for 3 consecutive terms from 2007 to 2016. She was elected as the representative of the 1st District of Laguna in 2016. She again ran as city mayor in 2019 and was voted overwhelmingly by the people of the city. Mayor Arlene received the Presidential Lingkod Bayan Award in 2011. It is the highest award given in the Philippines through the Civil Service Commission and the Office of the President of the Republic. Mayor Arlene, might you be able to give us a snapshot of your city, Santa Rosa?
All right, thank you very much, Wadzi, and good afternoon to everyone. As Wadzi have said, I'm Mayor Arlene B. Arcillas, City Mayor of the City of Santa Rosa, and our city is located 40 kilometers south of Manila, which is the capital of the Philippines. And in fact, our city is strategically located. We're near the ports and the airports of the city of the Philippines, as well as we're like 30 minutes away from one of the central business capital of the Philippines, which is Makati. We're tagged as highly urbanized city. We are home to the manufacturing plants of the Philippines, both local and multinational companies. We're tagged as the automotive capital of the Philippines, being home to all of the car manufacturing plants in the Philippines. We're highly industrialized, highly commercialized, and we can say that we are tagged as well as the next wave cities of the Philippines. And we also have a share in the tourism of the Philippines, being home to the theme park, which is located here in Santa Rosa, the Enchanted Kingdom. And we also is home to the premier electronics and semiconductor companies like Panasonic. So we can say that the city of Santa Rosa is highly commercialized, urbanized, as well as we are home to manufacturing plants, which contribute a lot to the GDP of the Philippines. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor Arlene. And finally, I would like to introduce Jaime Paulo Mora, who is the Senior Program Officer from the CityNet Secretariat. Paulie is the current Senior Program Officer in the CityNet Secretariat. He manages Capacity Development, Cluster Grant Program, and Technical Cooperation Program for the 163-member regional network of city governments, civil society organizations, and corporate partners working for sustainable urban development for the Asia-Pacific region. Paulie has been with the CityNet since 2016. Prior to working in CityNet, he spent 10 years working for a national city network based in Manila, the Philippines. He held various supervisory positions in both regular and foreign-assisted programs and projects that focused on urban development. Paulie has a professional background on development communications, project management, local governments, and urban sociology. He holds a degree in journalism. Paulie, would you be able to tell us a little bit about CityNet, please?
Thank you, Wadzi. Good afternoon, everybody. We thank our associate member, Think City, and GDI for giving us the opportunity to be part of this Urban Finance webinar series, part 2, the challenges of financing sustainable city development from a city leader's perspective. CityNet is an international city network for the Asia-Pacific city governments and urban multi-stakeholders. I'm actually presenting to you in our Secretariat office here in Seoul, Republic of Korea. Currently, we have 163 city government members, associate members or civil society partners and private sector partners that are working primarily for sustainable city development. We work primarily also with urban actors like city mayors, local authorities, international urban experts, and development partners. We do learning exchanges, technical cooperation, and sustainability projects for international city-to-city cooperation. That's it.
Great, thank you so much, Paulie. Thank you and I'll now invite the mayors to please turn on their cameras and Paulie, and we'll now move into the panel discussion session. And my first question would be for you, Mayor Arlene, and thank you for giving us that context on the profile of citizen, both corporate and individual in Santa Rosa and the key drivers of your economy. How have economic activity and revenues in Santa Rosa being impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic?
Actually, literally, we can say that the economic activity in the city, but not only the city, but the whole of the Philippines as well, was put into a halt. Since we implemented the enhanced community quarantine, wherein we asked the people to stay home, everything stopped. We stopped all businesses. In fact, when you stop the public transportation, it means that you immobilize the people. But here in Santa Rosa, there were some industries that remained open as per the IATF and the DTI, and those are the essential ones. Like, as I said a while ago, we are home to food manufacturing businesses here and the export-oriented businesses. So those industries were allowed to operate on a 30% basis. But then again, I have noticed as well that only some operated, and the others were so scared to operate even at a level of 30% capacity. So literally, we can say that the economic activity stopped. But then again, that happened like for a month. And then we slowly opened up. And with regards to the revenues, we can say that like in Malaysia, as I've mentioned by Mayor Roslan, similar to her city, the city of Santa Rosa is not really dependent on the internal revenue allotment. We are more dependent on the taxes, revenues, and the fees and charges paid by the businesses as well as the residents. So the basis of the revenues for this first 6 months will be the 2019. So although there was delay in the payments for the first 6 months because we stopped operation of the city government as well, only the we worked in a skeletal force. Only those that were addressed to answer the COVID pandemic remained operational in the city government operations. So we just rescheduled the payments of the revenue of the taxes, and I've noticed that since the basis was the 2019 taxes and income of the businesses and the residents, there isn't any difference quite yet on the revenues because we opened up in June and July. I compared the taxes and the income incurred last year as to this year, to this date, and there is not much difference. But then ask me after July, because at that time we will see the effect of the pandemic. All those businesses, they have already scheduled their payment for the first 6 months based on the 2019 income. But then we will see, because then we will know that a lot of businesses have closed down. So we'll see the latter part of the year, the 6 months after July. Then we will know that there really is a great effect on the revenue of the city.
Right. Thanks, Mayor Arlene. And if I can ask a follow-up question based on that. So it sounds like from a timing perspective, the impact hasn't yet affected the tax revenue of the city, but
Yes.
you expect to see it impact in the next half. Do you have any kind of forecasts or estimates on what you anticipate that impact would be? You mentioned that only 30% of businesses were operating, or businesses were operating at 30% capacity. Any projections on what that impact will be when it's finally reported?
We will see, because the 30% capacity that I was talking about is just for the first part, from March to May. But then we opened up now. So most of the industries we're on general community quarantine, GCQ now. So it's a different case from the ECQ. So most of the companies now, especially in Santa Rosa, because it's the manufacturing plants that we are operating on, and even the other cities, they opened up already, and companies and the manufacturing plants are on full operation now. So I don't think I'm hoping that they will their production will keep up with the
Great.
next 70% during the first part of the pandemic.
Got it. And Mayor Noraini, same question from you in Subang Jaya. What have you seen has been the impact of the pandemic on economic activity, and then following on from that on revenues, either in the current reporting period, and how do you expect the impact to be in subsequent reporting periods?
Okay, thank you, Wadzi. Malaysia has been put
Mayor
on.
Noraini.
Yes, thank you. Malaysia has been put on movement control order since the mid of March, and it is still put under restricted movement control order now, but majority of the activities has been resumed, unlike about 3 months ago where only essential services are allowed to operate. That means all the shops, factories, construction industries, hotels, schools, colleges are all closed for almost 3 months. And what worries us is that when their activities are not going on, when there's no income to the businesses, they may not pay taxes for the second half of the year. So we sit down, all the head of departments, and calculated that we may lose about 30% of our income. But luckily, after we opened up since last month, the income impact on us is not as great as we thought it's going to be. But we have been preparing ourselves for a reduction in revenue for between 15 to 20%. We are hoping that it will improve to only 10 to 15%. With that in mind, I have already asked my head of departments to cut down expenses by 10%, especially the operating expenses. And we, depending on our reserves, which we have, that can cover us up to the next 6 months to sustain us for the operational expenses, which give us great comfort. And as far as the licensing fee is concerned, I see that people do continue to pay, but we are not relying anything much on the development plan processing because there is not much activity in the construction industry, and all the players in the development construction sectors are forecasting of low sales in the future. So I think maybe the impact will be much more felt by us for the next few months or early next year when we are collecting the second half of the year and then the early tax for the next year. Anyway, now that businesses are back, I was told that nationwide we are expecting a 5% unemployment rate, which is higher than before at 3%. And locally in Subang Jaya, we have been talking to small businesses, the daily wage earners, who are feeling the biggest crunch on this epidemic because for 3 months they are not allowed to do their small trading. And we have been helping them out with food subsidies, and the government have come with this economic stimulus, a lot of subsidies to the bottom 40 of the society. But the longer term impact will be felt maybe a few months from now, especially when the big industries, the big economic sector will start to feel the pinch of not having that income for the past 3 months and for the next few months.
Right. Thank you, Mayor, for that comprehensive perspective. Paulie, from your view at CityNet, what are you hearing and what are you seeing, and how does it resonate with what we've heard from the two mayors in terms of broadly the opportunities and the challenges that cities have been experiencing from a financing perspective? It sounds like there's going to be a long tail, so the effects of the pandemic are yet to fully manifest themselves, and it really depends on the funding profile that the city has. And then the second thing is that there's some impact on small businesses, and some easing as well of some of that impact as businesses start to open up. What other perspectives can you share and add from other members of your network?
Yes, thank you for that question. From the CityNet perspective, since we're a network, from a network perspective, and we usually base our programs with our members, we really see that we anticipate that there's really a need further on capacity development for our member cities and how to cope with the challenges on post-COVID. So this cuts across everything that you can name under the urban development framework. So actually, we're seeing one of the big challenges now that our members are facing is how to really improve their digital infrastructure as to reducing the risk and physical transactions between government and people. We cannot really avoid them, but we know that as long as we don't have the vaccine yet, there is a recognition that there will be a slower movement even in our cities, and there will be reduced mobility for city residents. So city governments now, especially the developing cities, are really trying to utilize and to improve and enhance their digital infrastructure programs so that they can cover services they can reduce physical transactions and carry most of these government services online. So from streamlining government transactions to helping their students learn through online. So this will actually continue to rise. And we're also seeing some demands for improving design infrastructures for micromobility, such as improving pedestrian and improving bicycle lanes. Since slower movements does not always mean people slowly traveling from A to B, but we need to confine them in such a way that we still need to stimulate economic activities. So by improving their pedestrian and then by improving their bicycle lanes, we can also see some opportunities there for cities to become more livable, even during post-COVID-19. So these are some of the concrete conversations that we're actually receiving from our members in terms on how will they move forward in post-pandemic.
Thanks, Paulie. That's a really great kind of insight in terms of that continued focus on transport and urban mobility, even in the changing times. I want to come to the next question, but before I do, to invite members of the audience, please do submit any questions that you might have in the chat box and indicate who the question is for, and we'll be very happy to field the questions to our panelists. Mayor, if I can come back to the mayors now with some follow-up questions linked to Paulie's comments about the focus on mobility, for example, and transportation systems within cities. Mayor Arlene, what are your infrastructure priorities over the coming months and coming years? And how, if at all, have they been shifted or changed by the anticipated change in revenue, or by kind of a greater need to focus on certain aspects of public health and safety? But what are the infrastructure priorities that you have within Santa Rosa over the coming periods?
Yeah, right now, of course, our objective is to protect lives and save lives here in the city of Santa Rosa and everywhere. So we're finishing up the hospital. It's a good thing that it's on its last phase now. So we have the Santa Rosa Community Hospital, and we're about to finish. Actually, in 2 weeks' time, the second phase of the hospital, second building of the hospital, it will house like 150 bed capacity. So we're really finishing that one. And of course, we're prioritizing the health system now. And the infrastructure has to adapt to that. So we're putting up some more COVID isolation facilities. But then again, as I always say, we are also not only focused on COVID. There might be other calamities. And one of the infrastructure projects that we have in the pipeline are the evacuation centers for earthquake. So when we did the realignment of the budget, so budget prioritization is very important now since COVID. I really didn't remove the projects and the infrastructure projects designed to protect the people, or in any case there will be an earthquake or flooding. So I didn't really remove that because we know that anytime it will come as well. So we don't want to be caught unaware as a surprise, like what COVID did to us. So infrastructure projects will have to adapt to the new normal now. We have the plans of rehabilitating our public market. I'll push through with that, but then the design will be different now. There should be spaces, more spaces for social distancing, as well as we did continue on with the schools, even though we're going to do online schooling right now, in which a lot of budget has to be put into it. We're providing like approximately 40,000 tablets for the students. So I mean, there are other projects that have already started. So I don't want to compromise the structure. So that's why we still continued on and we'll finish up those projects. But other projects like the city college, we're supposed to build a city college now for this year. But then again, we're putting that on hold. We will see the budget, the revenue that we will be getting next year. Of course, housing is very important as well because there are also informal sectors in the city, and we're about to start again this year the medium rise housing. We will push through with that. Of course, why to address flooding? Most of these informal settlers are living in the near waterways, which is very important for us to put them in a safer place. So that will not be put on hold, but we will push through with that. So most of our infrastructure projects are projects that I know that are very important. In any case, another calamity like flooding and earthquake will affect the city. But then again, as I've said before, budget prioritization is very important. We will do away with projects and programs that we think are not really important now. We will still put most of our programs in our annual investment plan. At this time, budgeting, we're doing the budgeting now for 2021. But just as what Mayor Roslan have said, we will prioritize those that we think are important, not those that we think are like just projects and programs that we're doing it just for the sake of doing it. Additional projects for the city, to highlight the city. So we're doing away with those. In fact, most of our tourism programs that we think are not as important now, we will do away with those. And we have realigned those budgets already to answer to the COVID pandemic needs. We already have spent, actually, including the Bayanihan to Heal as One budget that the national government gave us, which is equivalent to a month's era. very important. So all financing, all help that we can get is very important, even though we have savings. I'm also resisting the urge to borrow at this point, but there are a lot of financing facility already that we have offered. But then again, I wanted to use what we have right now and also save what we have right now, because as Mayor have said, the next year in 2020, first part of 2021, we will know the real impact on our income and revenue of this pandemic.
Great. Thank you so much, Arlene, for that very comprehensive answer. I'll try and paraphrase rather. Firstly, congratulations on the completion of the hospital. And I think, you know, the point that you made earlier about for resilient city and continuing with projects like the earthquake reinforcement that addresses other hazards, so that as you rightfully say, the city isn't taken unaware, is really a key learning, I think, for a number of leaders across the globe. The ability to ensure that as we build and finance resilient cities, it's resilient infrastructure across a number of hazards. So that's inclusive of climate and natural hazards. It's inclusive of public health hazards and other risks. And I think also Mayor Noraini mentioned earlier when she talked about how, you know, the resonating really the point you made about budget prioritization, and she talked about the 10% reduction in OPEX across all of the budget lines in the city. Mayor Noraini, if I can come to you now with the same question, and it's really, what are your infrastructure priorities over the coming months and years? And if you can just give us some context on how infrastructure activities and development are being prioritized in the coming months in Subang Jaya.
It's raining right now, so if you ask the people, of course, infrastructure on flood prevention will be their priority. And it has been flooding, even though it's only a flash flood, which lasted only a few hours, but to the residents of Subang Jaya, it's a big calamity. So we are working on the flood alleviation in a part of our city, and that will be a continuous work that we need to do for the next 3 to 5 years. And some of them we need federal assistance in doing so, because it is an area where cross agencies are involved. We need the drainage and irrigation departments to be working on the same project, and it involves hundreds of millions of dollars to alleviate that same problem. So interagency collaboration, but vertical integration between local government, state government, and federal governments are needed to solve some of our problems. Unlike Santa Rosa, who have to deal with education and health, here in Malaysia, both of those areas are taken care of by the federal government. So I need to focus on mainly the road and drainage for the local consumption, for the local need. And for that program alone, I have lined up all the projects that needs to be done for the next 5 years. And the question of how to finance those projects, even though it can be aggregated into a few years, but we do need to have the money in advance so that some of the area are ready for incoming development. It is preparing an area for infrastructure and amenities upgrading so that we can attract more investors, because some areas in Subang Jaya are changing from industrial zoning into commercial zoning, and both of them requires a different infrastructures. And looking at the trend now, a lot of commercial areas are developed into also a mixed development, which consists of housing. When housing comes into a commercial area, that means we have to prepare for public amenities. We have to ask the federal government to build more schools and more clinics. So it needs quite some working, either that or we have to control the number of service apartments that is being built in the commercial area, because those areas are originally planned only for pure commercial. But now with mixed development and with transit-oriented development, apartments are coming into the commercial zone. So those are the new challenges for us. At the same time, locally, we also have to think about those who are affected by this COVID-19, especially the bottom 20 group, those who are involved in the informal sector, that the daily wage earners who lost their income. So instead of providing them physical infrastructure, we are trying to help them into this digital market, digital business from home, so that we can have more opportunities for them, because physical place is limited. And at the same time, this digital infrastructure requirements, even though Subang Jaya is quite well off as far as digital infrastructure is concerned, but how can we bring it up to another level? Safe city and women-friendly city and barrier-free city has been my the legacy that I want to leave behind. But how do we do this? How do we translate this into reality without the strong financing that is necessary? I have one project that I can share with you on how we finance our safe and smart city through the increase of revenue from our parking fees. Both need to use camera, but the first intent was for safe city. But using that camera, I can now monitor the hours of the car being parked there, therefore increasing the income, the revenue from that car parking fees by double. So that can in the end finance the project that I want for the safe city for that particular township. So even though it is not normal in Malaysia for us to create our own bond or have a big loan from the commercial banks, because we normally use our own resources or ask from loan from the state government or from funding from the federal government. But if we want to prepare ourselves in the new area where it was a brownfield before and to change it to something of a higher density development, then we would have to prepare the infrastructure first. This is where thinking out of the box, the normal way of funding things comes in, because I'm exploring into bond and loans from private sector. Back to you, Wadzi.
Great, thank you so much, Mayor Noraini, and that example that you just gave is one of the is a really powerful example of innovating and as you said, thinking out of the box in order to be able to attract private capital towards meeting some of your objectives, particularly from an impact perspective of building a city that is more inclusive for women and safer for women as well, and also really leveraging that digital component. I want to come back to Mayor Arlene and ask a question in terms of, the incorporation of digital as well in your city. Are there aspects of the way you're working and building Santa Rosa that you perhaps want to share as examples? And really, it's really around key sort of opportunities that you've seen or innovations that you've applied within Santa Rosa that have allowed you to creatively leverage private financing to meet some of the impact objectives that you have. So yeah, over to
Right.
you.
Before the COVID, we're already positioning the city as a smart city by digitalizing everything, and we're asking the help of the national government as well on this interconnections, and which is very important now because we're doing online. But then again, with regards to private financing, as I've told you a while ago, as much as possible, I want to use what the city has, the resources that the city has. But then again, later on, probably come the early part of 2021, we'll see if there really is a need for that. Luckily, when we opened up in June, 2 months of ECQ, we opened up in June. Most of the developers and private investors and locators who have planned to put up their company here in the city of Santa Rosa already had meetings with me. So we're just finishing up one big pharmaceutical company. There was just a delay because of this, but then I'm so happy that this locators are pushing through with their projects, and there will be another one who'll be putting up a state-of-the-art cold and warm storage here. So we will see, but then again, big projects probably will have to be financed. It's also a blessing as well that the loan that the city has before with the government bank is about to finish. So, and the loan capacity of the city is quite high with the profile of the city. So it's such a blessing. But then again, with regards budgeting as well, I'm like Mayor, I'm not banking on anymore, relying on anymore from the taxes, from the fees and charges that we will be getting from the small industries and the SMEs and MSMEs. We're not relying on that anymore. We know that a lot of people, especially our overseas workers, have lost their jobs. So in terms of forecasting our revenue, I told our finance team that we have to do away with that already. So what I want to do is that we spend depends on the availability of the cash of the city.
Right, understood. And I think Mayor Noraini was also describing and talking about the impact, the disproportionate impact rather on the SME and MSME sector, who are crucial citizens and residents of the cities. Paulie, from your view as the network, what are you hearing from your members about the impact on the SME as well as the MSME sector? And I really want to spend some time talking about them because they've come up as part of this conversation. I mean, they don't often come up in discussions around infrastructure, but they are key beneficiaries of infrastructure. And as both mayors have outlined, they have been disproportionately impacted by the pandemic. So across the CityNet network, what are you hearing from your members around what support and services they're delivering to the SME citizens of their cities and towns?
Yes, since most of our members are developing cities and they usually rely on their SMEs in terms of improving their local economic development, and when COVID came, I mean everything has actually struck them. So it's usually the function of the city now and how do they bounce back along with their SMEs. So they try to set up policies that will enable them to recover. But again, I think in the next few months, it will all be about city managing the health risks within their area to make sure that their small and medium enterprises can actually conduct business in a safer way. So it actually depends on how our cities will improve their health infrastructure in terms of like making sure that it's clean, it's safe, and it's COVID free. But at the same time, there's a big demand on how our cities will be able to manage these health risks. So it's still a question on the capacity for our city governments to manage these different health risks. So in turn, we'll just have, I mean, we'll try, they're trying to make sure that though it will never be the same as it was before, but to create an enabling environment for their SMEs to still move on and further conduct their businesses as well. And again, in relation to SMEs, most government transactions, we know that some of the government, I mean, they want to further make it easy for their SMEs to conduct government transactions. So as much as possible, if they need to conduct it online, or if they need to be it more convenient so as to not really spend too much transaction time with the government and then focus more on really managing their businesses in their own time. So that's actually the feedback that we're getting from most of our members.
Right, Paulie, and thanks, Paulie. And we have a question from Erlinda Crincia. Apologies for that, but Erlinda's question is linked to Paulie, what you were saying about the onus really being on governments to create that safe environment that allows the re-emergence of the economy and allows the return to normal economic activity. So Erlinda's question is for the two mayors, and the question is, how are you working and planning for a rollout of vaccines in the event that there is a vaccine, and other preventative measures to be able to control the spread of the pandemic as you reopen, as economic activity resumes in your cities? Mayor Noraini, if we can hear from you first, and then same question to Mayor Arlene. Mayor Noraini?
Hindi na yung
So the question from Erlinda is, how are the two mayors working and planning for the vaccines and other measures to at least control COVID-19?
Okay, sorry, my microphone was not on before.
Okay, I was wondering, but we can hear you now, so please proceed.
In Malaysia, I think as in many other countries, the role of production of vaccine, the healthcare is under the federal government. So we as the local government are in charge of ensuring to flatten the curve of infection. So we take care of the crowding that happens, the standard operating procedures of the shops and factories that have been operating, but not as far as the vaccine is concerned. Does that answer the question, Wadzi?
I think it does. Thank you. Mayor Arlene?
Yes, similar with Mayor Roslan. Of course, it will depend on the national government, because I think it's the national government who has the sole role of getting the vaccine and then allowing us to, if we can purchase it, then purchase it. So that is the role of the Department of Health here in the Philippines. And with regards with what we can do right now, like what we have been doing before. Of course, we take care of the people. If they get infected, we get them. We try as much as possible to isolate them under the care of the city government and of our barangays. Of course, there were ordinances and executive orders issued to prevent them from going out, to follow social distancing and wearing of masks, which is the very basic that we can do right now. Just like with Mayor, we are also giving help and aid through food and financial aid. I've already given to those who were first sectors that were first affected, and that we asked them to stop working, like the tricycle drivers, the jeepney drivers, even the PWDs, our senior citizens. We also have an amount set aside for the economic stimulus package of those that we know who have lost their jobs. So in that way, we are both addressing the health issues the best we can. And contact tracing is very important, the best we can, and monitoring by the city government and the BERT, we call the BERT, the Barangay Health Emergency Response Team. And then, of course, we also are dealing with the socioeconomic concerns. So this is a balancing act. This is a balancing act. Even if I want all of them to be kept in their homes, but then again, they have to work and be productive. And that is the order and the instruction of the national government. We have to let the others work while the others stay home. And when they get infected, we take care of them and make them well. I think that's what we're doing right now.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. And I think just to underscore that the point that both Mayor Noraini and Mayor Arlene made, which is the fact that the public health response in particular is the purview of the national government in both Malaysia and the Philippines. However, even on this call and even on this webinar, people still look to the city leaders and to local leaders for guidance and support, and some of the implementation and execution of national level policy is really happening and being driven at the local level. Emin Lucino has just made a comment that the two cities are really very fortunate to have dedicated and intelligent female mayors. I think we can all echo that comment. I will, to close, invite kind of closing comments from Mayor Arlene as well as from Mayor Noraini on, this. What assistance or support do you need from the ecosystem of players? And we have on this call a number of city leaders from other cities across the globe. We also have a number of investors and private financiers. What support would you need to be able to deliver effectively on your infrastructure priorities? And we're particularly interested in learning more about how can the ecosystem of investors support you to innovate more when it comes to financing some of your development challenges. Mayor Noraini, maybe we can hear from you first on that one.
Conventional financing needs a strong documentation so that the project becomes bankable. So cities need to learn to present, to document, to calculate the project so that it is appealing to the commercial banks to provide loans, or to any funding institutions, so that it looks good and it is sustainable. One thing that we can learn is on the techniques of the bankability of the project and presenting it to the funding agencies. Number two is that to create a different type of revenue as well as financing for the things that needs to be done, like the one that I've mentioned before. A project can be financed through public-private partnership, or some can even do crowdfunding if it's allowed in your country. But there are many other ways of sourcing an income for any financing for any particular project other than the conventional way of doing it. But as far as cities are concerned, we need to find the other revenues, other source of funding. And secondly, to make whatever that we have prioritized bankable and sustainable.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mayor. Mayor Arlene, and any closing comments and remarks on you on the same topic? How, what assistance do you need to be able to deliver more effectively on your infrastructure priorities, or what lessons can you share on innovative financing approaches in your city?
Yeah, as mentioned before, in order to be able to implement infrastructure projects, we need financing. That's very important. That's number one, of course. And of course, I think with our experience, I told you a while ago that the loan capacity of the city is quite high. But then what about the other cities? I think financial institutions and banks, government banks, and as well as private commercial banks should be a little more lenient on the requirements when a city or a small city or a municipality applies for a loan. I've heard that they are more strict now, checking on the capacity of the city. But at this point, I think if city needs funding, how can they move forward without it? So I think more lenient and easier requirements can be done, not even for Santa Rosa, but for other cities as well that do not have that much of capacity as high as Santa Rosa. And of course, as mentioned before, public-private partnership is very important. We're doing that right now in most of our projects. And of course, best practices also of other cities is very important that we can adopt as well. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I think Wadzi has dropped out. What about Polly? Any closing remarks
Yeah.
on your end?
Thank you, Donnie. Yeah, for as a closing statement, yeah, from a network perspective, again, CityNet is a city network, so we rely on our members, and we have this platform for our members to strengthen their capacities for sustainable urban development. And to be very concrete, each year we do an investment marketplace session in conjunction with our executive session, where some of our cities get to pitch in their projects to prospective partners. And during this event, we invite development partners who can help our member cities fine tune some of their investment proposals that they may lead to further prospects for growth and access to financing. These are not actually technical sessions, but these are more of a strategic view sessions for our members to increase their chances for financing and improving project implementation in the long run. So we do this each year, and we hope to have more partners with GDI and Think City to help our members increase their chances for prospective funding, or more of our really developed cities already advise our other cities on how to increase their chances as well.
Thank you. Well, thank you, everyone. I think that has been really, really helpful, and especially hearing real life situations and case studies that you have all presented. Thank you for everyone joining us today. Again, I think I would have to end the session soon. We are approaching the 1 hour mark. So, Mayor Noraini, thank you for taking your time. Mayor Arlene as well. And Mayor Arlene was telling me before she came on, she was really rushing in the hospital, helping somebody, and stuff like that. Yeah. So thank you for coming in. And CityNet, Polly, thank you. So thanks you all again
Thank
for
you.
being here with us.
Thanks for having
We
us.
hope to
Thank
have
you.
not at all.
Thank you. Bye
Thank
bye.
you.
Okay,
Thank you,
bye
everyone.
bye.
See you.
Bye.
Thanks. And for the rest of us here, since you're here and we are approaching the end of the hour, thank you all for joining us. There are a couple of things. Yeah. So this is the second webinar that we're doing. There's going to be a third one happening soon. So if you log on to thinkcity.com.my, you're able to find out when the next webinar is. So before you go, could I be able to request your help? And I've just published a webinar survey. It'd be really, really helpful if you can help us answer this, and this will really make us better. So with that, thank you everyone for joining us today, especially during a working day and a working hour at 4 p.m. today. We hope that there was something that we can all take away from today. So thank you again, everyone. See you in the next webinar.